I think we are heading towards the fall of prohibition. I think it's inevitable. And the reason why, primarily, obviously shifting attitudes and changes. Hey, I love baby boomers. My parents are baby boomers.
Right.
All my partners are baby boomers. But if you look at the data in terms of opinions on cannabis, they grew up with reefer madness as the default.
Yeah.
Everybody, they looked at it at cannabis as bad, even though some of the young baby boomers probably used it, but their parents demonized them for it, or they were the generation that was exposed to primarily black market cannabis that I'm sure shaded their opinion. But regardless, I think part of the reason why reefer madness is still around and we're still dealing with some of these outdated gateway drug type views is it's held by a generation that has a lot of political and economic power. And every year, 2.4 million baby boomers die. That's supposed to go up to 4 million by 2037. So that attitude, the stigma is literally dying.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Accounting Podcast. Today, I have with me Jim Ickes, the partner at Frantz Ward on the legal side of the cannabis industry, working with both cannabis, hemp, and hemp beverages over the years. But Jim, for those who don't know you, if you want to give yourself a brief introduction.
Absolutely. As you indicated, Raymond, very nice to be here with you today. Big fan of you and Dope CFO for sure. I think we met a couple of years ago and we've been friends ever since. It's great. You do great work. And so I'm really glad to be on the show today. So I'm an attorney. Don't hold that against me. They're practicing law. This is my 26th year. You can probably my giveaway with my bald head and all my gray beard. So I've been doing this a while, been in cannabis for about a decade. It's been a wild decade. I've seen a lot of things happen. As many people say, it's almost like dog years working in cannabis. So I've seen a lot. And I know you've been in it a while, so you've seen a lot. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about today.
No, for sure. Because, yeah, 10 years it is a long time. And kind of like we were just chatting just before this, it's evolved over 10 years. I would say it's evolved over the last 5 years. We would say, I remember when hemp was a thing in like 2018 and it was all about CBD. And then it did its up and down cycle and then had this resurgence the last 3 like hemp beverage and other type of hemp products becoming more like just like accepted by users, I would say. But before we get into that, just tell me a little bit about some of those really early days, like when you were first serving some of the first clients in the space. Was it licensing, business deals? What were some of the first clients' questions?
It's an interesting story. I got into it in 2016 when Governor Kasich at the time here in Ohio signed the medical cannabis law into effect. And how I got into it, I've done a lot in my career, a lot of litigation, a lot of, I guess you call it like risk management for clients. And I am involved in, I do a lot of HIPAA related work. I'm a healthcare information security privacy practitioner as well. At the time in 2016, when the law was passed, in the regulations that were passed, it required that operators guarantee the confidentiality of their information. So at the time I'm doing information security and privacy, I'm like, this is a natural fit. Plus I went to Ohio University and I've been around cannabis my whole life and I've been an advocate. So I think it's something that is relatively harmless in society. And I think the data bears that out. It was something that it was an easy practice area for me to jump in, and because I was a big fan and wanted to see it. I wanted to see cannabis normalized. So how I got into it though, actually I created a company. It was called Secure Cultivation. I picked a name that I thought perhaps it would be palatable to a conservative Ohio government. So they're going to like security. So I called it Secure Cultivation. And then I found some owners to take the company, and then they signed an engagement letter with me. So I literally created my first client, and I've been off and running ever since. And I've done all kinds of stuff. I've advised a European country on the development of their medical cannabis law. That was back like 2018 timeframe, 2017, 2018. And then
Congratulations for that.
That was Greece. I worked with the Ministry of Agriculture on the development of, or what they were going to propose as their medical cannabis rubric along with the other ministries. So how it works in Greece, one of the ways that law can be created is by the ministries as opposed to the parliament. They went about developing a law from the ministerial standpoint. So I got involved with them, and that would really got involved in that from another application. I met a grower who had dual citizenship with Greece. So that's how I got into that, which I was wonderful. I made some wonderful friends over there. Cannabis literally led me around the world in many respects. So it's been a great career. However, in 23, I picked up my first beverage client, and that led to me taking on many more beverage clients, both on the marijuana and on the hemp side. And that's primarily what I do. And that obviously changed because of recent legislation back in November, which I'm sure we're going to dive into. That's disrupting really the hemp market here in the U.S.
I was gonna say, yeah, let's dive into that next, but then I do want to circle back on
Sure.
just like the other countries, because as much as it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but we are always making progress. And so,
Yeah, I appreciate your optimism.
the joke too is that, trust me, if I'm just looking at my grow in my state, in my business, but sometimes it feels like more steps back. But if you can just look at the globe, there's a lot of like progress happening. But I get it. We got to pay our bills today and objectively win like our business.
Right.
But that's why you were one of the first ones I thought of, because I knew how extensively you were involved with hemp beverages, not just on the legal side, but just on operations and just like strategic business sense. And it did make a lot of strategic business sense, hemp beverage, the last few years. Like as a category, it was growing very rapidly. Better for worse, it does give you access to other markets as opposed to that, like how we've just been battling it out state by state and more traditional medical or adult use businesses. And so, just at a high level, just tell me what you've learned over the last years with hemp beverage. Like, why do you think it did become such a popular category? And then we can get into current date of like how the legislation. But for those that just been living under a rock, like how much has the beverage category been growing and normalizing over the few years? And you can even perspective, like we've seen more hemp beverages being created. So people are clearly buying them. I have my aunts and uncles are asking me about them. So just tell us a little bit about the history of hemp bev.
All right. I think the reason why it grew so quickly
Yeah,
is,
yeah. And this is just, hey, your perspective. It's my
yeah, this is
podcast.
only my perspective, but I think the reason why it grew so quickly is because lower dose consumption of THC is enjoyable. It is. And which is disconnected from most people's first interaction with the cannabis plant. I hear so many stories of people who consumed, maybe they smoked a high powered joint with someone, or they shared a vape with a high THC content, and it turned them into a paranoid mess.
Yeah.
Thinking about people that you need to apologize to from 20 years ago. It's the paranoia that comes with high dose THC consumption when you're not used to it is a real thing. I've seen people experience that. So, however, when you take it in a lower dose format, that's probably the way it's intended for most people. For most people, everybody has a different tolerance for it. And we know, you and I both know people who consume it all day long, every day. And for whatever reason, their endocannabinoid system isn't firing off like everybody else's, and they need to supplement it with phytocannabinoids from the plant. But I think most folks only need a little bit. And I think you can get a little bit in most beverages, 5 milligram. I think even 10 milligram is a little too much for a lot of people that I know. So I think when people got access to a lower rational dose of THC, I think they like it. And it's a better feeling, better social feeling than losing your executive function and drinking a bunch of alcohol. So I think it fits well into the social environment, a low dose beverage. So that, I think I'm totally speculating, but just based on my own life experience and just seeing people interact with these beverages, I think that's why it took off. I think people aren't as intimidated by it. Most people who are not cannabis people don't want to necessarily go into a dispensary. We're still dealing with the stigma associated with it. That this is cannabis overall is still a Schedule I narcotic. according to the federal government, which I also think feeds into the paranoia that people feel when they have a higher dose. But so I think lower dose is a suitable dosage, and a beverage is a great form factor for delivering that. So I think that's the reason why it took off.
Because it is one of those ones where, because there was beverages before, but to your point, there were such high milligrams, like they didn't take off. And not only did they not like, and of course, there's been some really like awesome Cannabis Beverages brands over the years. It started out west, but the majority of them, it was always like, I remember it was like a decision back in the day of, do we get freezers to store these? Like, how quickly are they even going to move? And so, like, instead of having a dispensary try to figure out how to store beverages at the correct temperatures, it does like move faster at 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams. And it's funny where it's like, it seems novel, but it's like they move because it's an enjoyable experience. Like at this point in the game, if it wasn't enjoyable, like there wouldn't be this proliferation of like user cases and high positive reviews, positive testimonies from various different brands. And I even think like back in Denver for a few years, like it was a 10 milligram edible that I would get when I'd go to the dispensary. It was just like an add-on item. And I remember that was more than enough to give me the giggles. And I'm like, 175-pound man in his mid-20s.
Yes.
Imagine more normal people, and I smoked every day living in Denver at that point in my life. And so it was like, yeah, low dose is plenty. And I think I like the stackable effect. Like edibles didn't make sense because you could eat one and you're like, I don't feel it, I'll just eat one. Whereas like beverages take time. You got to drink in multiple times. You get used to it. So definitely makes sense to me. And alcohol, people are drinking less.
Like easier to titrate up and find your level is when you're starting at a lower dose. There's a lot of
down.
That's right. Maybe you try to eat a giant meal and get some sleep. It may help, but yeah. So you want to, as they say, go low and slow. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I used to I understand the complaints of the legal marijuana side of I call it the dispensary chain, because they've invested massive capital and dealing with over-regulation in many respects.
Overtaxation,
the 280E issues, which I think we'll probably jump into. So it's an industry born into punches and having to pivot all the time because of reefer madness. It's really expensive. And then to walk in and see flour being sold in a gas station or some of the wild examples of things that are being sold. So I understand that. However, I think from a normalization of cannabis standpoint, I do think that view by the legal marijuana side is flawed. I think, and I've told my clients that are on the marijuana side, get you a hemp brand, get you a lower dose, and get your brand out into the market so people know what it is. And then if they like it and they trust you, then maybe they'll go to the dispensary later. If they're like, hey, maybe I can scale up a little bit on my dosage and I'll try some other products.
Or in the new markets, and then they see you in one market, then they go to a market where it's legal. They're like, oh yeah, absolutely, I can do it here now.
And I think Pure was trying that, and I thought that was prudent on their part. But now it's all turned up. The table is turned upside down now.
Yeah. Let's get into that piece because I know you're on the legal side. I'm on the finance side, and so the table getting flipped up affects everything, where it's like the legal side affects the finance side. And like we were talking offline, oh no, there's real cash implications already. And it's been going on for a couple of weeks. Kind of, can you talk us through that a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Hey, why were people blindsided by this? Like how was it able to take effect? And then we have this like the end of 2026, we need to either make a decision or have a carve out at the state level. But can you just tell people a little bit about the legal process of what happened to these hemp products and what can people expect at the end of 2020?
Yeah, this past November 2025, the federal government passed the Extensions Act, which was a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. So it was a very important piece of legislation, a must pass. So Mitch McConnell tethered this 0.4 milligram cap for hemp-derived THC products to that piece of legislation. And then they built in a year buffer to allow for operators to transition. So currently I call it the federal cliff, is November 12th of 26. So that's coming up in a hurry. There's a whole host of various bills that have been introduced that are bipartisan to extend that past November to give farmers some clarity so they're going to have to start planting next month. We don't know where. Yeah. You know, whether to plant hemp or not, hemp or tomatoes. And everybody is hearing things about what they're going to do. That's way above my pay grade. All I know is November 12th, 26, we're staring at a 0.4 milligram cap on THC or hemp-derived THC products, unless there is an extension or some of these other pieces of legislation that actually set up like a rational rubric for regulating THC at a federal level. Yeah, that's like the one.
Yeah, and I remember it was right like my birthday, and I was like, "Oh, all right, there's some legislation going to get worked into." I'm like, "It's a must pass. We do need to open up the government." All right, what's the craziest thing that could happen? And then I like came back to a ridiculous amount of emails of, "Oh, have you seen what happened?" And so it was like one of my first experiences. Like, oh, things can change fast. Like even when you're totally well informed and you know it's coming down the pipe, like you just don't think it would like actually happen or require a lot of like activity. But yeah, that really like snuck in there as a perfect storm almost.
It did. And I had to deal with clients crying on the phone. We have people who've invested like hundreds of thousands of dollars getting brands developed to go to market and the next new social beverage. I mean, respects a lot of people believe in it. Like farmers, it was sustaining farmers. I think last number I saw, we're talking about a $30 billion industry overall, not beverage, but I'm talking about hemp overall, and they come to a screeching halt. So what's happening, what I'm seeing in real time, people that have had capital queued up to help them expand, that's drying up, and like business is slowing down. And there's been
a spurt of sales like increase I saw, and because I think people are trying to get their last orders in, but now it's tricating down month over month. And do we want to keep manufacturing or purchasing this amount of inventory? Because it's like now we're having to try twice as hard to sell it. And so I'm not saying we got to close it down, but let's just not have this much inventory on hand. So I guess a question that came to mind when you were talking about like the federal level, because I always think about taxes. Tax strategy, then there's the state and local tax strategy. What about state carve-outs? So even if the federal government says cannabis is illegal, and then the states are like, hey, we hear you. We're going to have our own program because we want the tax revenue and we think our citizens of this state should have access to this. Are any states doing stuff like that for hemp?
Yes. Okay. And what I've seen...
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
What I'm saying here in Ohio, we've adopted the 0.4 milligram cap. And we're recording this on March 20th, and it goes into effect today. So retailers are actually pulling 5 and 10 milligram beverages off their shelves and other products too.
Those store clerks are going to have a hell of an after party.
Oh,
we're called products.
I feel bad. It's almost probably like a wake. They're having a wake of really the death of a huge segment of the beverage industry, but also smoke shops that are selling hemp-derived THC gummies. And
we have flower shops in Wisconsin where it's flower concentrates, and it's good like product in the sense of clean. It's like somebody who like smokes flowers. No, it's good product, but it's essentially becoming illegal.
But to answer your point, though, there are states that have developed programs. Minnesota has those. They kicked it off with their own. They have a 5 milligram dose cap.
Seems reasonable per beverage.
Minnesota and Tennessee has a program. They go up to 15 milligram in a container. Texas just promulgated regulations that have been released to the public, and so that their program is kicking off. I have a lot of clients that move from Ohio down to Texas, so that they're going hardcore into Texas. Florida is a very popular market, in the Carolinas, so it's all shifted south. Really, to states that don't have robust medical or cannabis programs, so the hemp-derived stuff is really popular in those places. Now, what I mentioned to you, because you're on the finance side, how does that impact? Let's say we do hit this November 12th cliff and we're at a 0.4 milligram cap for hemp-derived, because beyond that, the statute defines it as it falls under as a Schedule I narcotic.
Yes, it becomes marijuana, which is currently a Schedule I narcotic, which is currently subject to 280E until some S3 rescheduling happens. No, that's Yeah, just to explain that for the audience, I think that wasn't, I never thought about that. But yeah, if the federal government says it's 0.4 and then the state says it's okay if you sell it, but it's above that, federally statutations, which is where 280E operates. 280E isn't a state tax code. It's like a federal tax code. It then jumps up to that, which like that it has to be considered. It's not a 0% chance that the government will just be like, oh, you're good.
Yeah. We're in for some more tax chaos. I see some chaos coming on the horizon.
Keep us both employed, I guess, because it's going to be a lot of back and forth and considerations and thinking through things. I'm sure people are just try to use it to get their tax and legal opinion, but I'm like, no, let's have somebody who's followed it for a while. I guess like just based on your opinion, like what do you think will happen? Do you think it could actually happen where hemp companies like could be subject to 280E? Obviously, tax code more than like a legal impact, but just
so I'm a natural optimist.
And
sometimes that corrupts my thinking, and when something makes sense and you hope that, I hear a lot that this is a robust industry and people are making money and people like it. And, there's no way that they'll let it, but yes, they will. So you're putting a lot of faith in people that really don't understand this plant and don't really care to.
Yeah. Yep.
And they understand money. And the unfortunate part is that we're dealing with an industry that's in the early innings. We don't have billion-dollar brands out there.
We lobby accordingly.
We don't have a Budweiser hemp beverage out there that can go and throw some largesse around and make something happen to extend it. My opinion, I'm accepting the reality of a 0.4 milligram cap on THC because that's the only way I can exist, because these businesses have to move forward. So either it's a 0.4 cap, rely upon the entourage effect to provide a beverage that's palatable to people. And I think we can, even at that ridiculously low dosage.
Even if it's healthy, it's like people drink Coca-Cola, which is like terrible for you. But yet it sells billions of dollars worth of cans a year. So it's still a good beverage.
The prop that was used by Governor DeWine when he was fire and brimstone on cannabis and saying that he was harming the kids, and when he wanted because he tried to issue essentially an executive order to ban intoxicating hemp that was shut down by the courts, but he used as a prop what looks like a Nerd's bag of candy that was infused with THC. Then my thinking at the time was like, an actual high fructose corn syrup bag of Nerds candy is probably way more unhealthy than a
naturally derived like fruit product.
Yeah.
But again, like we were joking off camera, so that's almost too logical for the world that we live in. Cause yeah, it's like we put too much faith, and I said this on a different conversation, but we live in this world of cannabis and hemp and products and commerce and business and capital and what makes sense to get this product to market. But if you're not in this world or consume these products, like you don't care. And rightfully, there's a big old world out there. There's war going on. There's inflation going on. People don't know what's going on with interest rates. And so like on the political
side,
like, yeah, we fall very low. Oh, and it is interesting too, where it is really big at 30 billion, but it's not like big alcohol big, where it's somebody explained it to me, which is a really intelligent person who came to cannabis from 10, 15 years in alcohol. And they were like, they lobby together, where you have like wine, spirits, and beer all lobby together because they remember prohibition, and they're like, we can't go backwards. And we remember some places down south, they still don't let you sell alcohol. They're still dry counties, whereas like cannabis and hemp are so fractured. It's like harder for us to get like a consistent footing to get anything going. And so like we fight each other. So it makes it easy as this young hemp industry for political people to get together that don't really know anything to be like, I don't think it's that big a deal. Let's just let the cannabis companies deal it out.
I saw the 2018 Farm Bill, and as tremendous good news. I thought it was great because we got to see, even in a smaller block, THC descheduled. 0.3% per dry weight, that calculation. We got to see that descheduled. So I thought that crack was something that could have been exploited by anybody who's in the cannabis industry overall. To say, hey, look, yeah, you've let this out there, and the sky isn't falling. The sky isn't falling. We have THC out in the wild, and you can try to conjure up a boogeyman and it's a big bad boogeyman, but sure, kids are ingesting it and going to the hospital, but they
We're already
never.
ingesting all types of cannabis and other
I
kinds
know.
of substances we get from our our local friends. Dude, that's why
They never have a follow-up though that, hey, the kid got to the hospital and he slept and he was fine. No long-term damage, as opposed to other things that are so ubiquitous in our society. Not here to go to war with alcohol, but it's on every alcohol, cigarettes, but they're on every street corner in America. They just are. You can find it anywhere. And we know that the devastation, 170,000 people, Americans die every year as a result of alcohol consumption. And as as part of being a free society, there's a level of destruction that we accept. We allow that to happen because we're willing to take the risk. We've all agreed upon that, and that's fine. But what's frustrating is we have these really less toxic substances, cannabis included, that gets thrown into the bucket with all the other nasty stuff. There's no way that cannabis should be treated like heroin. It's absurd.
Yeah, that's why I think rescheduling is an if, not it's a when, it's not if, because it's like it's getting too silly. Believe it or not, I think we've gotten pretty silly, but it'd be too silly to be like so close and not at least reschedule it. But this is interesting. With one final question on the hemp topic, on some of the carve outs, what's the difference between hemp beverages versus hemp consumables like flour and concentrates? I guess if they have a cap, it tends to lend itself towards like edibles and beverages, but how are they handling like hemp consumables, whether it's vape or flour?
I think they're all the same. So if that product has THC in it, it can only be 0.4 milligram. So that's a self-contained, or a container of whatever the container would be of a dab. You can have it only at 0.4 milligrams of THC in that dab. 0.4 milligram THC of a gummy. How you're going to package that up with other gummies, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, that all goes, and maybe individually wrapped. I don't know what's going to pass muster. But so one individual can, regardless of the size of the can only have 0.4 milligram.
Find a way. We'll see what the business owners and the entrepreneurs and the innovators come up with. And honestly, like the market is still changing. We used to think they would only buy 100 milligram beverages, and we got all the way down to 5 milligrams, and they were selling way faster. So I know enough to know that we don't know what the end consumer wants. It's going to keep changing. Until that point, like the future is still going to keep rolling out. Like hemp's still going to become a thing, whether it changes or not, it'll evolve. Same with the cannabis industry. So I guess just kind of looking to the future a little bit, as the sun is going to come up tomorrow. What has you a little bit, obviously we talked about with the concern of the future, but what has you excited about the cannabis or the hemp industry in the future going forward and looking up to the next 10 years of your career?
I think we are heading towards the fall of prohibition. I think it's inevitable. And the reason why, primarily, obviously shifting attitudes and changes, but I love baby boomers. My parents are baby boomers.
Right. Hopefully we get them for a long time.
I work with a lot of my partners are baby boomers. But if you look at the data in terms of opinions on cannabis, they grew up with reefer madness as the default. Everybody, they looked at it, at cannabis as bad, even though some of the young baby boomers probably used it, but their parents demonized them for it, or they were the generation that was exposed to primarily black market cannabis that I'm sure shaded their opinion. But regardless, I think part of the reason why reefer madness is still around and we're still dealing with some of these outdated gateway drug type views is it's held by a generation that has a lot of political and economic power. And every year, 2.4 million baby boomers die. That's supposed to go up to 4 million by 2037, based on, obviously this is a Google search, but provided you believe my data. So that attitude, the stigma is literally dying with a generation. Yeah. And sometimes that happens, like bad thinking or outdated thinking.
I love my grandparents to death, but they've had some views on other things that were like, all right, that's dated, grandma. I know you're a saint, but times have changed.
That's right. And then that's a good way to look at it. But I think,
and it makes sense too, where I'm optimistic too, just because the market does keep getting bigger. And yeah, there's like some markets that are talking about restricting or license caps, but overall, people are becoming more used to cannabis. And like we saw it in Minnesota recently, where it's like they went from like a forest to like bare ground to a facility to like fully built out and bringing products to market. And then that's like a whole $1 billion market that's just getting its feet underneath it. I live in Wisconsin where there's no market to be. And then generationally, like there's a generation below me that drinks almost no alcohol, and like they're all into their nicotines and their nootropics and their cannabis and their micro doses. So it's
I think it's a society, and I mean, I have young kids. I mean, my kids are 13, 14, and I have an 18-year-old, and they think, well, I think hardcore drugs, they think alcohol, they think it's dumb. They don't understand why you'd want to do that to yourself. And I think the mindset of there being an exchange that I'm going to have a good time, but I'm going to pay for it the next day, it doesn't make any sense. So I think just we're moving past, or I should say attitudes are changing in how we socialize. I think people just want to feel good. You just want to feel good and feel better. And I think that thinking has been brought on by access to so much information. These kids are raised on so much information that they can tap into and learn. And I think the data bears out that they think that that alcohol is dangerous and poisonous. So they're shifting to other modalities of socializing. And cannabis intoxication is completely different than an alcohol intoxication. You know, when you know it, it relates to your executive function and
motor function, executive function, like and it is interesting. I feel like it's like they have so much information where it's like, I don't know, in the 90s you had movies or like your local people around you. And it's, if you grew up where like your whole family were drinkers and that's what they did and you socially accepted it. You're like, yeah, it's liquors for old guys. I'll stick to beer, but like we're a drinking family, or movies was still pretty much like glorified.
I mean, I watched Animal House and a lot of the 80s movies, and my mindset was you go to college and you party down. It's expected. But as now that I'm older and I talk to my kids, I'm pretty my 18-year-old, don't waste your time running the bars, man. It's
not. You want to control yourself. You have plenty of time for that. Nice, man. Any other thoughts before we wrap this up? This was a pleasure, Jim. I'm glad you were able to jump on and just shed some light in. And I know there's going to be carve outs, but I also accept that there's probably going to be some level of 0.4 cap. But again, I just know that give it another few years, things are always percolating and changing, and Schedule 3 could come by and then it resets the clock yet again. So every time we do reset the clock, it's like it still gets reset again. So anyways, any other final thoughts? Where can people find you in 2026, Jim?
Oh, so I'm still going to a lot of beverage events this year. This category is going to survive, but also it's transition into really just alternative adult beverages. So different ways.
Like tropics. Like I've seen a couple of other beverage people that were coming into hemp beverage, and then they already had beverages that like I'm just used to like Mountain Dew and Pepsi and Gatorade. I'm like, and water. So I'm like, all these kids nowadays are drinking this like mushroom tea infused thing, but it's not lion mane's mushrooms. So I'm like, oh, I didn't even know there's this whole
that's right
kind of caffeine nootropics line. But no, which makes sense because again, like I had coffee when you wanted caffeine. Now there's Celsius.
Like alternative, healthier versions of or precursors to caffeine that it's being infused. So that's opened my eyes. Like, we're representing the hemp beverage clients is that I've discovered this whole other world of other beverages that people are interested in.
It's a whole bev. You're like,
when I was at that expo, and I'm always inspired by the entrepreneurs that are out there in this uncertain environment, trying to make it and do something good in society. And I'm optimistic. I think cannabis is inevitable. And I guess my sentiment to everybody is to live your cannabis life. Don't hide in the shadows that you're an advocate or that you consume. People need to be vocal about it. I try to be. Knock on wood, I've had a good career. I'm proud of how I've taken care of my clients over the years, but I'm also a cannabis guy. And honestly, it's been very helpful to me managing anxiety and over the years. And that's not changing. I don't drink alcohol anymore just because I can't do hangovers. And I know a lot of people my age are the same way, but the cannabis is totally manageable. It helps me sleep better. And I think a lot of people are on that wavelength, and I think that'll only continue to grow. And I think we'll have jobs. I think we have jobs, Ray.
I think we'll have jobs too. And man, I was just joking. Like, I got back from my place. Like, I'm starting to use cannabis for sleep. It's like, I'm getting to the age where I just use it as an alternative to alcohol. Like, it was very much a rec use. And it's like, my sleep matters more.
Well,
This
you just
helps
want to feel
mentally.
good.
Dude, I'm just trying to feel good, and it definitely helps. All right, man, Jim, I'll let you go, but let's definitely stay in touch. Always a pleasure. So much
Oh,
for your
thank you,
time.
Ray. I appreciate it. Anytime, man.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.